given where the world is at the moment, we have to start off by talking about COVID-19. Samoa has been one of the most successful countries in the world at dealing with COVID, but it has come at the cost of shutting yourself off almost entirely from the rest of the world. So my question is, what's your strategy to reopen the country, and what sort of time frame do you have in mind?
I don't think we can talk about time frame and just yet, because I think the COVID situation is still, uncertain. We, like other countries, have begun to have some measure where there is opportunities to travel out and to travel in. The trading links are still open, thank goodness, with both by air and by sea. So we're not quite as isolated, I think, as it could be. So I think at the moment, because we have been so fortunate to be COVID-free, what we have been able to do, because we are under emergency law, is to open up some of the provisions that had been made originally, in a sense, like a lockdown, and to prevent large gatherings of people. So we have been able to loosen some of those conditionalities. So there's more flexibility within the country of people being able to move around and tend to their livelihoods. So we're beginning a more internal process as opposed to the external process. But having said that, we have begun negotiations with New Zealand for a travel bubble. And the two areas that we're looking at is, first of all, our medical needs for people to be medevaced to New Zealand, because we had medical schemes. And that has continued, but the issue was the MIQ, the quarantining. So the current discussions are about non-quarantine availability. And the second group is the RSE, the seasonal workers programs. We've been able to do that with Australia. So quite a large number of our workers have been transported to Australia. I think they're at about 700 people to date. And now New Zealand has indicated that they are open to seasonal workers from Samoa, Tonga, and Vanuatu. So those are some of the avenues that are opening up for us.
You are Samoa's first new Prime Minister in over 2 decades. So I think a lot of people will be wondering, what's your vision for the country?
I think any sort of notable shift will be more towards a shift in terms of prioritizing. We're looking at essentially making a larger investment in people's livelihoods and in community development. I think that's one of the more significant shifts in terms of what a government vision is, especially as a new administration. So you will appreciate that we're a new administration. We had quite a lengthy political impasse of up to 3 months. it has cut into the usual budget year. So at the moment, we're in a transition budget period of 3 months, and we hope to table in Parliament in September a full annual budget. And one of the things talking about budgets is how do new administrations use the budget as a tool to begin to introduce what it has prioritized and what it would like to do. We do appreciate, of course, that there are ongoing commitments from the former government, and we're very mindful that we don't want to be in a situation where we're not able to complete what has been started, so we can honor the government commitments that have been made. But at the same time too, and we have had a bit of time since coming in last month rather. We've had this period of close to 3 months where we can review the budget and begin the process of introducing what we would like to see begin to be rolled out with our new government.
Let's talk about foreign investment, if we may. One of Samoa's leading hotels has investment from Papua New Guinea. What kinds of opportunities do you think there will be in Samoa in the next few years for other PNG organisations and indeed for the wider international business community?
Yes, PNG investments, and you've mentioned the hotel, the Taumesina, and of course, PNG ownership of the Bank of the South Pacific. Those are the two more notable areas of PNG investment. And I personally have been very happy with that development within the Pacific. I think there's always opportunity here with tourism, but with the current conditions with COVID, that industry, not just Samoa but worldwide, is in a difficult space. But that still remains. Should we return to more open skies and open borders? There is quite a concern around the financing sector. I think some of the banks are moving out of the region. I think New Zealand had been having this discussion with their central bank, and had raised concerns that the commercial banking industry seemed to be moving out of the region. I think that would have a serious impact on the region as a whole, and and especially if we're looking to investments, that there are the institutions whereby the money can be moved and worked. So I think if we're talking about PNG investments in the Pacific, then the financial sector is probably one thing that they could give some priority to.
Thank you. You did mention the tourism industry, and by Pacific, compared to some of your neighbours, Samoa's tourism industry is fairly undeveloped. Assuming things do get back to normal in the next year or two, what kind of strategy might you have to expand that sector?
Well, first of all, I think we need to build a much stronger policy base around tourism. I think, having been in government for a very long time, I do know that there is a lack, in terms of very strong policy base. The only entity that sort of essentially covers tourism is the Tourism Authority, but that was set up as a marketing agency. But there is no base by which, a very firm policy base is where everything can then be drawn down, to develop our tourism. And it's one of the things that we would like to seriously look into, especially at this period, because this might be an opportunity for us, given that we are at rest, so to speak, and, to take the opportunity to build that more stronger policy base. What exactly do we want to see? How do we want to develop the Samoan tourism product? How do we market it? And what is the level of investment that we need to put into it if we do see it? And it has proven itself, a good supplier, to the economy, but it could be so much better.
And what about trade and investment but amongst the Pacific Island nations as a whole? Obviously, those countries share a lot of cultural similarities, but they are, quite dispersed. What do you think could be done to, or what would you like to see done to improve trade ties between the Pacific nations?
Well, I think, like anything, Robert, you sort of see where people's feet are already walking in that area. And I do see the most active trading practice within the islands is mostly from Fiji. If you're talking about Pacific Island product, we see the more active player as Fiji trading with other countries. It's imbalanced in terms of, if there's equal trade, but then, it is the experience of Pacific Island countries being small countries, that the balance of trade is always uneven. And even within the Pacific, with the Fijian example, you see that reflection as well. But I think we have to talk amongst ourselves. Is there any real trading capacity there between us? Or, not so much about between ourselves, but more perhaps, how we can collaborate, as small states, whether it's for a particular product like coconut or something like that, and trade with other partners. So, I mean, we have an organization here. It's a small organization, Women in Business. And, one of their products is coconut products, including coconut oil. So just looking at what they've been doing, they started here in Samoa, but they were very keen to work with other islands because they did appreciate that, as small island countries, the supply source is quite limited, and that if they wanted to, engage in a competitive market, they needed to draw on a broader resource. So they started talking to other islands, about the coconut products and how they could collaborate. And so, they have a market with the Body Shop or things like that. So I think, that kind of example is something, governments, and I'm glad that, it's a private sector thing and it's a woman-driven thing as well. But, it's the concept and the idea that is, it could work. I mean, it does work. So perhaps maybe not so much amongst ourselves, or maybe we need to investigate that, but how we can also collaborate to do trading collectively with external partners.